Hello, good day everyone. This is a supplementary video lesson for syntax of English or English syntax, where I will be discussing some parts of the reports wherein some of you have raised their concerns on understanding some of the concepts. Now to start, the first thing we need to clarify is that when you are making your WH question transformation or sentences, always remember that the interrogative or the WH words are always classified as your NP2 when making your diagrams. Some of you might have been asking on how to categorize your WH words and why is it that they always fall under NP2. It's because if you look under this table for the summary, most of the words, if you are still confused, well, to give light on that, everything on the WH words will give you a noun as a result, which is why it's always considered as an NP2 or a separate noun phrase. And together, there was also another question on why is it that the whom here on this sentence is placed on the last part. Well, it's placed there because once transformed into a declarative sentence, wherein you can transform it as the committee invited someone, your whom there becomes the answer to the question. You're always going to form the Reed-Kellogg diagram as if you have already structured the declarative sentence. And because your question, whom did the committee invite, is only the question, you will not have the correct structure of the Reed-Kellogg diagram. Thus, you need to follow first and make the declarative sentence. So from the question, whom did the committee invite, you will have the sentence, the committee invited someone. And that is how you're going to arrange your Reed-Kellogg diagram, which is why it was mentioned here. The WH questions are represented with Reed-Kellogg diagrams as if they were statements as shown in the diagram. And I want everyone to notice the transformation of did invite to invited, right? Because we are not referring to the doer of the action. We are referring to the receiver of the action, which will be given light later on as to how really should you use who versus whom. Now, let's make the Reed-Kellogg diagram of the sentence, someone played the solo with the WH question transformation. Thus, the sentence, someone played the solo, we first need to undergo WH question transformation. So for step 1, you need first to place the verb in the beginning of the sentence, which is why we will have played someone the solo. Now, for step 2, you need to change the indefinite word, wherein your indefinite word here is your someone. Indefinite words are words like something, somewhere, wherein it tells us an indefinite concept. Thus, the indefinite word needs to be changed into the WH word, and the best word fit for it is the doer of the action question, who. Which is why, going back to step number 1, once it was replaced with who, played who the solo, you need now to put the interrogative question or the interrogative word rather at the beginning of the sentence, thus having the final product, who played the solo. Now again, your sentence now here is who played the solo. Let's now proceed to the creation of the Reed-Kellogg diagram. Now, to show to you the Reed-Kellogg diagram of the question who played the solo, I also presented the derived sentence, someone played the solo. So, let's begin. So, just as how we start from the very basic, we first draw the horizontal line in order to show to us the sentence itself. And then, the first thing that you need to do here is, because this is the doer of the action or someone, you also need to place there who. Okay? So, as opposed to the first example I have given you, this time we are now showing to you the doer of the action of playing the solo, which is why it is placed here. Okay? Next, this is how we do it on the other parts. We just put the vertical line there, and then followed by placing again the word played, okay, and then still placing again another vertical line, and then finally we have the last one. Instead of playing or putting here the solo, we just put there solo, and then below we need to draw for the vertical line. There we go, sorry, the diagonal line rather, and then we have the, and since let's just put here the. It's a little hard, you know, to draw. There we go. And there we go. The who played the solo. So this is the actual representation or the Reed-Kellogg diagram of the question, who played the solo. Okay? Going back, we now proceed to the person reference clarification, since most of us might be confused on how to use who and whom. Now again, as a clarification, we need to use who for persons acting as the doer of the action. Let's say, who played the solo, right? Wherein who there is acting as the doer of the action. Now, if you have use whom for persons acting as the receiver of the action, which is why from the earlier sentence, whom did the committee invite? Whom there is referring to the one person who received the action of being invited by the committee. Okay? Now, in order to make the underlying structure of the MVP or the main verb phrase, we always need to remember the formula. The main formula, as given here, is enclosed in brackets tense plus the modal plus the have plus en, which stands for the perfect transformer, plus be plus ing plus the main verb. Or, you also have your, in case of a dummy do, you have your enclosed in brackets tense plus do plus the main verb. Although the main verb is placed on the last part outside the bracket, when making now your samples, I want you now to place the main verb inside of the bracket as well in order to emphasize that it is the main verb. Now I made the sample for each of the formulae given. If you have for your first formula, I should have expected that from you. Your main verb phrase here is should have expected. Thus, you will have the following product: I enclosed in brackets present plus your modal should plus your perfect transformer have plus en plus expected. We can see here that have expected is already in present perfect tense, which is why we need to put have plus the en there to transform it into a present perfect tense. Then finally, that from you. You also have for your next formula, you have your tense plus do plus main verb. You have your sentence, I did not see that coming. You have your I enclosed in brackets past plus do plus not plus see that coming. It is to be noted that the word not as a negative marker is to be placed right after the dummy do, which is why it changes now the main verb phrase into a past tense form. Thus, the sentence, I did not see that coming. Let us now proceed in discussing your dataset analysis. This time, let us now discuss the dataset analysis I have given you, particularly on the 5 basic sentence types and the basic sentence transformations. If you can see on the screen, what I have asked you to identify first was numbers 4 and 5. Now, if you were to analyze the sentences carefully, you have homemade pizza homemade pizza for lunch was a good idea. This can be identified as a type 4 since your NP1 here stands for your homemade pizza. And again, for lunch is a modifier of homemade pizza there, but still is under for NP1, followed by was, which is a linking verb, and then finally you have a good idea, which is still another noun phrase, but it coincides with the first noun phrase, which is homemade pizza for lunch. Okay? Therefore, since both of them are noun phrases which refer to the same referent, you have your type 4. Now for number 5, again, this is also considered as a type 5 since NP1 stands for Barbara. The transitive verb is the collected, and the second noun phrase or NP2 is her most valuable possessions. Clear enough, this shows a transitive type sentence. Now, what we did on the second part was to put, again, the subscripts for each part or for each word, since you need now to know whether this is an adverb phrase, this is a noun phrase, etc. and etc. With the instructions given to you, I have asked you, does any or which of the sentences contain a second NP1? Or does any contain an NP2, or do they contain NPs at all? Right? So an example was already given for your reference, and you have here for number 1. In the 1970s, scientists considered polar bears an endangered species. You have here NP1 for scientists, but you have 2 NP2s because polar bears in both endangered species refer to the same thing, which is why they are both NP2. As for number 2, hunters were the major threat to the bears at that time. And you can see here now that, again, hunters and the major threat are both the same thing, to the bears. Okay, and which is why they have 2 NP1s. Okay? Now let's go to the basic sentence transformations. What the instructions tell you is, convert each of the following positive sentences into its negative counterpart. From the first sentence, the United States is including identity chips in all new passports. The basic thing that you can do is just to include the word not. Okay? And then indicate whether you're inserting the negative word not after the substitute auxiliary do, after another auxiliary, or after be as a main verb. And how did we do this? Again, we show here now that the United States, and then we have the underlying structure, present plus be plus ing plus include, identity chips in all new passports. With the second sentence as already transformed, you now put the negative marker not after be. Okay? For the second sentence, it is just the same. Some people have suggested implanting identity chips in prison inmates, transforming it into have not suggested. As what you can see on the underlying structure, present have suggested, since it undergoes present perfect tense. You also have your have not suggested. Okay? Alright, so that is how you go into its underlying structure. Okay, now in transformation or transforming the sentences into positive yes or no questions and then into negative ones, we have here, we should have bought a smaller car, and then transforming it into yes or no, should we have bought a smaller car? You can have seen the repositioning of the word should being placed now into the beginning of the sentence, since it is a rule that the modals go first in transforming it into a yes or no question. And then finally, you put the word not or shouldn't, okay, after the modal. Shouldn't we have bought a smaller car? That is how you are to transform it into a negative sentence. Negative yes or no question. Another sentence is you have a hybrid might have given us better mileage. Transforming it into a yes or no question, you have might a hybrid have given us better mileage, and mightn't or might not a hybrid have given us better mileage. Mightn't may not be so familiar or may not be so common to all of us, but it will be accepted. Now, another part of your assignment, rewrite each of the following sentences as a WH question. And an example has been done for you. Let's say, she saw something scurrying across the yard. What did she see scurrying across the yard? The most important thing here is you need to identify where the indefinite word in the sentence is. Such, Lillian was sitting at the piano in some way. Your indefinite phrase here is in some way. Therefore, first you need to transform it. Was Lillian sitting at the piano in some way. And then finally, after moving it into the beginning of the sentence, it's time to transform in some way into a WH word, arriving with this is a reason, or the way, rather not the reason, the way, the manner. How was Lillian sitting at the piano? That is the final answer. Next, she would be playing it in a recital sometime. Sometime here now is referring to time itself. Therefore, in order to change that, first again, you need to move it into the beginning of the sentence. Would she be playing it in a recital sometime? And then arriving with the final product, when would she be playing it in a recital? And the last part, again, creating the underlying structure of the main verb phrase. You have here, again, remember the formula here. You have, perhaps low levels of exposure are not dangerous to humans. As basic as this is, you need now to just make the underlying structure are not. And you have present plus be, since this is a linking verb, plus not. Then you also have Canada does not want to allow baby plastic bottles or plastic baby bottles to be sold. Your main verb phrase here is does not want. Therefore, you have present plus do plus not plus want. Right? Now for the rest of the diagrams, this will be given in a separate picture mode. Okay? Thank you so much everyone for listening into our lesson.